Hey, my name is Nathan Loop and welcome to my channel on network automation. In this video we're going to look at Python and specifically creating an API with Flask. In some of our previous videos we created a basic SNMP poller that was reading an inventory file and regularly polling SNMP devices, but it was just outputting that output to a screen. So what we're going to do in this one is take that output and save it and have it accessible via an API. So if somebody else wants to access it, they can get to it without having to access your computer directly. Or if you have another device that wants to read it or another program, you can do it that way as well. So first thing is in our program that we made before, we were just outputting to a screen. So we want to take that and have it in more of a place we can store and read from. Ideally, you would do this in something like a MySQL database, probably, if this is going to be like a real production use. But since we're just showing how to create an API, let's just do it with a simple CSV file. So instead of printing that output, we're going to do a CSV file called results.csv. And before, when we did open, that was all we had to do, but because we're going to be writing to this one, we have to put an A after it for append. So we want to append all of our results to this. So we have our file open now, and what we want to do is actually create a CSV reader object. So csv.reader on our file that we had open. So we opened up our file and then we created a CSV reader on it. And then, I'm sorry, not a reader, a writer. We're doing a writer this time, not a reader. So results.csv.writeRow. What we want to do is now we want to do a date. Why isn't it filling? Oh, I haven't. Okay, so we have time imported up here. We actually want to do from date time import date time. It's kind of a weird way you have to import that library, but there we go. Datetime.now. This is going to give us a timestamp is what we just did. So when we output it, we want to see what time this happened. So it's a good thing to know. And then we also want to do these variables here that we have, our host, our version, and all that. Host. I don't care about the community string, the version. I just want the mib, and then I want the actual output. If you remember in our previous video, this EasySNMP, it gave us a lot of information on this session.get, on that get method. But what it gives you here is just dot value. So if we do dot value, it's going to cut out all that extra information. So that should have a CSV file there. So now let's go to Python SNMP poller.py, and it should start polling our devices. If you remember, we were polling a demo server that was out on the internet. Oops, we have an issue with our write row. So what that's saying is we gave it 4 objects and it only wants 1. Where's my... There we go, there's Visual Studio Code. So we want to actually give it to it as a list instead of individual objects is what it was complaining about there. So let's save that and go back to our terminal and fire up our SNMP poller again, and we should get all of our results, hopefully, output to our CSV file. Let's just give it a few seconds here, make sure we don't see an error message. I believe it was polling every 5 seconds, maybe. All right, so let's look at our results. Okay, so we have some results in there of our Raspberry Pi, its host name, its location, and then that demo server on the internet and its host name. All right, so we have all of that there. So now let's go ahead and create our API that's actually going to use this. So let's make a new file here called Polar API. And we're going to be using Flask. So from Flask, import Flask. I think that second one needs to be caps. I always capitalize it. I don't know why. I think it does. All right, so the first thing you do with this is you're going to create an object, and that's going to be a Flask object, and that's our actual application. So that's how you initialize Flask, and then you actually have to run it as well. So app.run, and we're going to say we want to debug this, and that'll just give us some extra error in debugging. So we have our application and we're running it, but what are we running? We actually have to create the URLs that it's going to respond to. So APIs are all based on your URLs, or specifically your URI, the part after your domain name. So we want to tell it to app.route. What route is it looking at? That's what it calls your URI. And our first route here is just going to be just our basic web server, just a slash. And then that's going to say index is, we're not going to pass anything to it. Return working web server. All right, and then real quick, what this @ does, it's called a decorator in Python. And what that means is whatever this method here under it that we created, whatever it's returning is going up to here. So it is it's returning working web server to app, which was our Flask app.route. So it's just how it handles the flow of data within Python. So now, if we go to 12700, oh, I guess we actually have to start this. So Python, and I've already installed Flask in our virtual environment here. So Python sno polarapi.py. So it says this is a development server. Do not use it in a production environment. You can actually move this to using something like Apache, but this will actually run just a basic debug web server on your computer. Now when we load this, there we go, working web server. So we didn't have anything after it, just slash essentially after it, and that worked. So now that we have that working, let's build some actual API data with this. So we want to do the same thing again. Let's copy that, but instead of the slash, we want slash API host? Yeah, host. And then, so what do we want to put after host? We want to actually give it our host, which is going to be in the form of a string. So string and then host, and that's going to be our host name. And then we're going to have to tell it the methods that we wanted this to support. And that is going to be, in this case, get. So with APIs, you have your get, your push, your patch, your delete, all the different methods with which you can interact with it. We're just getting data in this case. So API get, and then we're giving it a string that's we're going to refer to as host. And then within our index here, we have to tell this here that we're going to be using host as well. And then, so now what do we want to do with this? So we have our host name. So we want to open our results, right? So with open results.csv, as results, CSV dot, or results CSV equals CSV dot reader. Forgot to import CSV up here. And we're going to be reading that results file. And then we want to iterate over that. So for row in results CSV. So for every row in there, we're going to do this. if, what did we tell it? We told it that, okay, timestamp was first. I'm just going to copy this over here just so I have something to reference, and then I will delete it. Where did my Visual Studio Code go? Here we go. Or I can just comment it out. There we go. Now I have something to reference. If row, that's 0 is our timestamp, 1 is our host name. If row 1 is equal to our host name that we gave it, then what do we want to do? Then we want to, we're going to have to create a variable with this. So our variable is going to be called output. And let's make our variable a list. And I'll show you why here in a moment. So if row 1 is equal to our host name, then output dot append. So we're going to append to our output file, and now we are going to give it a dictionary. And a dictionary in Python is a list of paired items like name, Nathan, age, whatever. So we're going to have host, row 1, right? Let's say host name. This is going to be, let's click somewhere else to get rid of that. And let's copy this. So we're going to want a few more of these to put in our dictionary. So we have our host name. We're going to have our mib. We're going to have our timestamp, and we're going to have our output. All right. So host name, timestamp, mib, output. Timestamp is 0. Mib is 3. Output is 4. All right. And then this is formatted incorrectly. Let's delete that. There we go. Okay, so now we have a list, and within this list is going to be, every time it finds a row that matches, it's going to add a dictionary into that list. So this is going to be a list of dictionaries. That's a fun one. And that's going to have all of our results from that. And then once we're done doing all that, we want to take our, once it's done iterating over that, we want to take our output and return it. So let's return. And here, Flask has something called JSONify. And so let's import that from Flask as well. So let's return a JSONified version of our output variable. So it's going to take that list of dictionaries we made and turn it into some pretty JSON. So that should work, hopefully. Never works the first time, but let's give it a shot. So let's go back to our command prompt here. Let's do Python SNMP polar. Oh, that's our polar. All right, let's let it fill in a little bit more data, whatever. We want to do Python polar APIs or API. Okay, so it's saying when I copied and pasted that code, I copied and pasted, I didn't change the function name here. So we have index twice. So this is going to be get host, sure. So let's try that. All right. And so what was our, we had a, API host string. So let's go back to our web browser. Well, it returned nothing. So why didn't it return anything? So let's look at our code. Oh, you know why? Because I didn't fill in my URL properly. So let's take that and let's do our Raspberry Pi that we were working on. So that was 192.168.1.151 is my Raspberry Pi. Nope. So say my index is row 4 doesn't exist. Zero, 1, 2, and 3. All right, it restarted our web server, so let's refresh again. There we go. So now we have a JSONified version of our output. So our SNMP puller, every time it pulled my Raspberry Pi, it pulled the name, and that was its name, or that was its name. It pulled the location, that was the location. And then we can change this, and we also were pulling demo.snmplabs.com. And there we go. It only pulled that once. I had a different polling interval, and there was that. So that is a working example of just a GET API request using Flask for our SNMP puller. In the next video, we will do just a quick one, and we will do a put request or push. We will be able to actually update our inventory file, and then we'll move on to something else. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the next video.